She is just incredible and indelible and just a truly original person. So for Diane, watch one of her movies and wear like a really cool, interesting outfit.
You got a car?
No, I was gonna take a cab.
Oh, no, I have a car.
Seems like old time. Diane was really important. She was one of my first mentors.
Hollywood icon Diane Keaton has died at the age of 79. This news has just broken in the United States.
Hollywood wasn't ready for this goodbye. Diane Keaton, the fearless star who redefined what it meant to be a woman in cinema, has been laid to rest at 79. The news stunned millions, sending shockwaves far beyond Hollywood. But it was the funeral itself, quiet, intimate, and overflowing with raw emotion, that truly broke hearts. Among the tributes, one moment stole the spotlight. Reese Witherspoon, an actress who had long admired Diane and drawn inspiration from her, stepped forward and delivered words that left the entire chapel in tears. Her tribute wasn't just heartfelt, it was unforgettable, the kind of speech that reminded everyone why Diane's spirit will never fade, even in death. This wasn't just a farewell to an actress, it was the closing of a golden Hollywood chapter. And Reese's voice, trembling with grief yet filled with admiration, may have been the most powerful goodbye of all. Fans across the world are still asking, what exactly did she say that silenced a room full of legends? And why did her words leave even the brightest stars in Hollywood speechless?
She is just incredible and indelible and just a truly original person. So for Diane, watch one of her movies and wear like a really cool, interesting outfit. Diane was really important. She was one of my first mentors.
Diane Keaton wasn't just an actress. She was a revolution. In an industry that demanded women fit into polished, perfect molds, Diane dared to be different. From her quirky charm in Annie Hall to her unforgettable role as Kay in The Godfather, she didn't just perform, she created characters that felt alive, flawed, and real. Winning the Oscar for Annie Hall wasn't just a personal triumph, it changed the way Hollywood looked at women forever. Her influence stretched beyond the screen. The oversized suits, the hats, the bold choices, Diane's eccentric style became her armor, her identity, her rebellion. She embodied a freedom that made people fall in love with her, not for perfection, but for authenticity. Fans saw themselves in her imperfections, and that connection made her timeless. That's why her passing at 79 felt like more than just losing a star. It was like watching an entire era fade away. Hollywood icons come and go, but Diane represented something bigger, a spirit of independence and authenticity that few dared to embrace. And while the world grieved, whispers began to spread, because as bright as her legacy was, there were parts of Diane's story she never wanted the world to see. And those secrets started to surface in her final days. Diane Keaton's funeral wasn't the glitzy, camera-filled spectacle Hollywood is known for. Instead, it was a private, intimate ceremony, just the way she would have wanted. Hidden away in a small, ivy-covered chapel outside Los Angeles, family and a handful of close friends gathered to say goodbye. Each guest was handed a single white rose, Diane's favorite flower, a symbol of love, grace, and quiet elegance. Inside, a screen played a gentle video montage, clips from The Godfather, scenes from Annie Hall, and even home recordings of Diane laughing with her children. Tears and laughter mingled together, as though Diane's presence filled the room one last time. For those who loved her, it was an emotional reminder that she wasn't just a Hollywood legend. She was a mother, a friend, and a soul who lived on her own terms. But while the service itself remained simple, there was one moment no one expected. Reese Witherspoon, stepping quietly into the chapel, soon became the center of attention. Few anticipated her presence, and even fewer expected what she was about to do. Because when she rose to speak, the entire room went silent. What Reese said in that moment left even Hollywood legends stunned. Reese Witherspoon walked up to the podium with trembling hands. She wasn't Diane's closest collaborator, but she had always called Diane one of her greatest inspirations. Her voice cracked as she began, admitting that without Diane's fearless authenticity, she might never have pursued her own career in Hollywood. "She gave me permission to be myself," Reese said, tears rolling down her face. She showed me that you don't have to be perfect to be unforgettable. Diane lived on her own terms, and because of that, she made the world braver for the rest of us. The chapel fell into silence, broken only by the sound of quiet sobs. Even Al Pacino, sitting in the front row, lowered his head in grief. Reese's tribute wasn't polished, rehearsed, or carefully crafted. It was raw, vulnerable, and real. The exact qualities Diane had embodied her whole life. Witnesses later said it felt like the moment everyone realized just how deep Diane's influence reached, across generations of women who saw her as more than a star, but as a guide. By the time Reese stepped away, even the walls of that quiet chapel seemed heavy with emotion. Her words lingered in the air like a final performance, unforgettable and impossible to shake. And as Hollywood legends sat stunned, the question echoed silently among them. Why did Reese's words strike so much deeper than anyone expected? The moment Reese Witherspoon stepped down from the podium, the atmosphere shifted. Guests looked at one another in silence, some clutching tissues, others staring blankly as if they had just witnessed something they could never forget. In a room filled with Hollywood's greatest legends, Reese, younger, from a different generation, had somehow captured Diane's essence in a way that left even veterans speechless. Al Pacino later described the tribute as a reminder that Diane's magic lived on in others. Meryl Streep, overcome with emotion, whispered to a friend, "Reese said what we couldn't." These reactions spread quickly, and within hours, social media was flooded with quotes from Reese's speech, with fans calling it the defining moment of the service. Clips of her trembling voice and powerful words leaked online, sparking headlines. Reese Witherspoon leaves Hollywood in tears. Reese captures Diane's spirit and the tribute that stunned the stars. While many tributes were heartfelt that day, none resonated quite like Reese's, perhaps because it came from someone who had once stood in Diane's shadow, now standing tall in her honor. And yet, as powerful as Reese's words were, what came next made the chapel hold its breath all over again. Diane's children, Dexter and Duke, were the next to speak. Their voices were tender, filled with the love only family can express. Dexter described her mother as stubborn, endlessly curious, and always finding beauty in chaos. Duke read from one of Diane's private journals, where she had written, "The greatest thing I ever learned wasn't from scripts, but from people I loved." The chapel grew still. For a moment, it felt as though Diane herself was speaking, her words echoing into the hearts of everyone there. Reese, sitting quietly in the pews, was seen wiping her tears again, visibly moved by how closely Diane's private reflections mirrored the tribute she had given moments earlier. Many later remarked that it was uncanny. Reese's words and Diane's own journal aligned so perfectly, almost as if Reese had been guided by Diane's spirit. It was a moment that blurred the line between coincidence and destiny. But then the service took a turn no one was prepared for. A video began to play, Diane Keaton, alive and radiant, leaving behind her final message. The lights dimmed, and on the chapel's small screen appeared Diane herself. Recorded months earlier, she was smiling, wearing her signature hat, her eyes sparkling with the wit that had charmed audiences for decades. "If you're watching this," she said softly, "then I guess I've moved on. But don't be sad for me, be curious. Life, and maybe even death, is about asking questions, loving deeply, and laughing at yourself." Gasps filled the room. Some guests clutched their chests, others broke down completely. For a few minutes, it felt as though Diane was still with them, not as a memory, but as a living, breathing presence. When the video ended, the chapel erupted into a standing ovation. Al Pacino clapped with trembling hands. Diane's children hugged one another tightly, and Reese, visibly overwhelmed, whispered to a friend, "That was pure Diane, still teaching us, even now." But a mystery lingered. Why had Diane recorded this message months before her death? Did she somehow know the end was near? And if so, what else had she left behind that the world has yet to discover? Behind the hats, the laughter, and the dazzling roles, Diane Keaton lived a life filled with contradictions. She often described herself as a loner, someone who thrived on stage but found silence in her personal world. Despite high-profile romances with Al Pacino, Warren Beatty, and Woody Allen, she never married. To the press, it was baffling. But to Diane, it was liberation. "I love differently," she once wrote, Freely, fiercely, imperfectly, her eccentric fashion wasn't just style. It was a shield. She admitted she never saw herself as the pretty one, but rather the interesting one. That honesty resonated with women who felt invisible in a world obsessed with perfection. Reese Witherspoon later referenced this exact truth in her tribute, saying Diane taught her that beauty wasn't about symmetry or youth. It was about authenticity, about owning your quirks with pride. Away from Hollywood, Diane found peace in photography, architecture, and raising her children. Her home wasn't lined with golden statues, but with books, sketches, and family letters. That was the Diane few people knew. Not the star, but the woman. And Reese's words reminded the world of this hidden side, painting her as someone who mattered far beyond her films. But in her solitude, Diane carried a curiosity about life and death that shaped her final years. Diane Keaton had always been reflective, but in her later years, that curiosity grew deeper. She filled journals with unsent letters, philosophical questions, and musings about love, loss, and what happens after we're gone. One entry that surfaced after her death read, "Maybe we don't leave this world completely. Maybe the parts of us that loved and forgave stay behind in those who remember." These words went viral in the days following her passing. Fans called them her final lesson. And when Reese Witherspoon echoed this exact sentiment in her speech, it felt almost supernatural, as if she had stepped into Diane's private thoughts and given them a voice. Her reflections weren't sad or heavy, they were hopeful. She often said, "What matters isn't how long we live, but how deeply we love." The rest is just noise. It was the kind of wisdom that struck people as timeless. Reese's tribute, aligning so perfectly with these words, turned the funeral into more than just a farewell. It became a message, a reminder that Diane had been preparing us for this moment all along. And through all of her introspection, one thing never changed: Diane's rebellious spirit. Diane Keaton was never afraid to break the rules. In her 70s, she still joked, still dressed like no one else dared, still embraced the quirks that had made her a star. Hollywood chased perfection. Diane laughed at it. Asked once about aging, she famously said, "The trick is to stop trying to be young and start being alive." That single line became a philosophy fans carry to this day. She never stopped creating. She photographed, she wrote, she mentored, she inspired younger generations to stand out rather than fit in. One young actress she once mentored recalled Diane's words, "Don't wait for permission to be yourself." The world doesn't need another copy, it needs your story, Reese, in her tribute, echoed this very spirit, saying Diane made her believe she could thrive in Hollywood without surrendering her individuality. That was Diane's legacy. Not just the films, not just the awards, but the courage she gave others to embrace their true selves. Reese Witherspoon captured this better than anyone that day, tying Diane's rebellious honesty to the lives she changed forever. And yet, even with all the laughter, wisdom, and rebellion, questions remain about her final choices and the mystery she left behind. Diane Keaton's passing at 79 was more than the loss of a star. It was the end of a Hollywood era. She wasn't just an actress, she was a spirit who proved that authenticity mattered more than perfection. Her final calls, her last post, her recorded farewell, all hinted that she knew her time was near. But nothing captured her truth like Reese Witherspoon's stunning tribute. With trembling words, Reese reminded the world that Diane gave permission to be different, to age without fear, and to embrace flaws as strengths. Guests whispered that Reese gave Diane the farewell she truly deserved. Raw, imperfect, unforgettable. Fans online agreed, calling it the moment Diane's legacy was sealed. And so the question remains, how do we want to be remembered? Diane answered it with her life by living boldly, loving deeply, and never apologizing for who we are. Through Reese's words, that message will echo long after the curtain falls, because legends like Diane Keaton never truly leave us. They live on in the voices that carry their light forward.